What's up, everybody? It's Joe and Justin from Empire Music, empiremusic.com in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And today we're excited to announce our new partnership with Powers Electric Guitars.
Powers Electric out of Southern California, made by Andy Powers, CEO of Taylor Guitars. But these guitars are really remarkably different from Taylor guitars, and we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, Justin just spent a bunch of time out at the factory with Andy, and it's a really small, a very small operation, which is kind of, if you picked one thing to start with the dichotomy of Taylor, just like super low output, really artisan guitars, and very small dealer network. So it's just like, there's like, what, 10 total dealers, something like that?
I think right now 10 total dealers, and yeah, small batch guitars, and for good reason. There's a lot of innovation packed into these. And when we get into how these guitars are actually manufactured, built, and constructed, you'll see why they're small batch instruments.
Yeah, if you follow us regularly, we don't add a lot of brands. Like, if you go to our website, which you should do, empiremusic.com, there isn't like one of those brand things that pulls up and there's like 700 brands on the screen. Like, I'm not into brand collecting. I don't think it's gives you guys the best experience as customers. And this is the first new thing we've added in a really long time. And it's, interesting because I think it shows, because, Andy's history as a builder, is really highlighted here. You know what I mean? It's just like, obviously, they're not really drawing a line between Taylor and Powers, but it's just a natural thing to talk about. At Taylor, the format of the guitar was there, and there's, it was really like, Andy's working within that platform, whereas this really shows his ability to do, I think arch tops are highlighted dramatically through this build. Like, a lot of his repair work with set neck guitars is here.
Yeah, and if you don't know Andy's history, he's a builder with a ton of experience from even before his Taylor days. So he's worked on everything, vintage guitars from the very beginning. So his choices in design have been informed by everything he's put his hands on over the years. So we get into these guitars. That's a kind of a good segue. When he was conceiving these guitars, really, he put himself back at the very beginning of the electric guitar. So thinking back to the first guys in Southern California, where Andy's from, that were building those guitars, guys like Paul Bigsby, Leo Fender, Les Paul, all this innovation that came out of Southern California back in the 40s and 50s, where you didn't have StewMac, you didn't have parts catalog to order parts from. Everything was manufactured from the ground up. And as we'll talk about here, almost everything on this guitar is manufactured by Powers Electric. Aside from the tuners and the high quality pots that he puts in these guitars, everything, the screws, everything on this guitar is manufactured, innovated with Powers Electrics.
Yeah, they're making their own tooling, and it's just like, to make a guitar like this, you have to, because we kind of had we had a call with the sales team, with everybody here at Empire. And our takeaway, Justin and I, was interesting because we knew we were going to do this video together. We hit on some key things we immediately agreed on as like what we think the highlights of the guitar are. And really, like, if we break them down into a handful of things to talk about: the body, the neck, the pickups, the hardware, and then like the kind of like we'll call it like the excess, the parts, your pick guards and your tone knobs. If you learn about those and you break it down, I don't know if we have seen really anything like, we haven't seen anything like this that has all those, but you can really see it's interesting because it's like the modernness of it, because Andy's an engineer that really understands how instruments work, and then you also hear the musicality that's born out of that, which is really what I think is most unique about it.
Yeah, super fresh guitars. We get a lot of new instruments in here, and as Joe says sometimes in his videos, Empire Music has to buy the guitar before you do. These are guitars that we really believe in, and I can't remember a guitar that we have got in since I've been here that when I go home at night, I'm thinking about it and how it makes you feel when you play it. So, I don't want to overstate it, but I don't think I can. I really like these guitars, how they sound and how they feel. So.
Yeah, it's like Justin's definitely full on these. Like when he came back from the factory, we were like, I was excited because it's, Justin's a great guitar player, and like getting a tool that makes you excited. Like, this is, at the end of the day, we're just like you guys. We just like guitars and love guitars and want cool stuff in our hands. and we're excited to stock some. So check out empiremusic.com. You know we'll dial the guitars in. You can call us to talk about all the specific ones, and Justin's going to be our go-to expert in-house on these, which is really cool. So let's bust it down and let's talk about the body, because I love how the body's put together. I think that the body, neck, those two parts of the guitar are really, really interesting to me. I love acoustic guitars. So that's a natural, like, I think about those things a lot. And let's talk about the body.
Yeah, so when you see how the body is made, it's really quite remarkable. But let's talk about the materials first. So we have an all ash body. So ash, popular builder's choice. It's lightweight, stable, easy to work with. We know what it does from the very early tellies on. So awesome tone wood, all hollow. So it's a fully hollow, carved out piece of ash. On top of that, we have a maple top. So maple, known for its clarity, brightness. In the case of the guitar Joe's holding, maple definitely has a nice aesthetic to it with the transparent finish, which is available in these guitars, both in opaque and the transparent finishes. What they do to this maple top, though, is really, really cool. It's bent back. This top is under tension. It's built into this guitar under tension, and really what that does, it creates a springiness and an attack, a liveliness out of the notes on this guitar that's really, really cool. The top is also braced. So, on top we have a bracing underneath, and that bracing is just mortised into this cavity, into the back and sides of the guitar on the sides. So you'll hear us talk about this guitar as being a very resonant instrument. Every feature on this guitar, starting with the body, is made for maximum resonance. Going back to this top and how it's made under tension, the way Andy describes it, think of it like a saw blade, like a musical saw blade. When you bend a saw, the pitch goes up. And that's the idea here. We bend this piece of wood, it gets built right into the body, and the result is a very lively guitar with a very unique resonance.
Yeah, I can't stress, like, the coolest thing to me is the mortise of how the top fits onto the body really shows a true understanding of how to get like an explosive sounding guitar. If you think of vintage acoustic guitars, we talk about how, like, the back braces will go under the kerfing on the sides, all those touch points, and the tighter those touch points, and when you notch out into the body, these little notches where the braces sit, you make that super tight, you make the top tight. When we play these guitars unplugged, they're really, not only are they loud, they have tone. It's unbelievable, and that absolutely translates through the pickups. And to me, is like, I think, like, if I picked one thing of, like, how we'll talk about how the bridge sets too, but having these all milled out, the guitar's really light. These are all like 5-ish pound guitars for the most part.
Under 6.5. So
Yeah,
it
so
depends on the hardware and whether or not we have the cam tail or a hardtail. But it's lightweight for sure and resonant. Joe was just mentioning the bridge, and that's a unique part of this guitar. Everything is built around this. There are 2 sound posts under the bridge that connect the top and the back of the guitar. So this is where the top and the back of the guitar meet, and it allows for the top and back to move in parallel. So they vibrate in parallel. What that means for you as a player and what you feel and hear is a more resonant guitar. But what I think on electric guitar, more importantly, when you crank this up, it's a full hollow body guitar. When you crank this up, there's no F-holes on it. You have the top and the back still making contact, but you get this resonance, and you can crank this guitar pretty good and not get feedback. It mitigates feedback really well.
Yeah,
which is super cool.
It's interesting because I was most surprised when they sent the guitars, that Justin ordered at the factory, how much gain they took when you were playing them. I was really surprised because it's just not. That's probably like not a congruent thought of the hollow, no feedback. So that leads us into the marriage of the neck and the body, which is a very important part of any instrument. Tells a story, but in this instrument, I think is extra important.
Yeah. So these necks, they're built with the frets on it, and for good reason. We'll talk about that in a second. So the frets go on before the neck goes on the guitar. but the neck is slotted at the bottom. It's kind of a reverse dovetail design, and it makes a lot of contact with the body, but most importantly, it doesn't move laterally as a result. So it's glued in here very well. As Power says, you'll never get the neck off this guitar. It's designed to make maximum contact with the body and resonate as one whole musical thought. So we have a mahogany neck set into the body. On top of that, we have a Honduran rosewood fingerboard. Really dense rosewood. It's among the hardest rosewoods out there. And it's a very tonal wood. So you'll see it's wood that's used on marimbas. It's wood that, you know, by itself has a nice tone to it. If you do the whole tappy thing. The fifth fret tap, tap.
Tap, tap.
One of my top 3 features on this guitar, we'll talk about next, is the split radius fingerboard. So what Andy did with this guitar, we have a fingerboard that's an asymmetrical radius. So not talking compound like we're used to, asymmetrical. So the peak of the hill is moved towards the bass side. So the peak is up here. It's rounder on the bass side than it is on the treble side. It's flatter. So translation, bigger bends without choking out, and super comfortable chording all the way up and down the neck.
Yeah, that's super cool, because if you think about a standard compound radius you'd see in almost any custom shop of, you know, Fender, it's like a 7 1/4 to 9 1/2 or 9 1/2 to 12, whatever. But it's basically like, hey, these first 5, 6, 7 frets have this radius, and it's shared, and as you move up, then it gets flatter as a whole. They explained it to us like the bass side is like kind of like a modern Fender guitar, like a round, you know, it's hard to measure an asymmetrical, like in that round, a 9 1/2. And then the treble side is like a 15-ish, you know what I mean? So a very flat. So that means your bends, even in the very first position, you know, on like a 7 1/4 inch vintage style radius here, it's hard to bend even in here because, you know, you don't really realize the benefit of a compound radius until you move up the neck. Here you realize it right out of the gate, and it's hyper noticeable. I mean, very, very noticeable. Super easy to play because of it.
No doubt. And there are so many little details on this neck that are just, when we talk about, you know, the innovative mind of Andy Powers. So at the top here, you won't really be able to see it in the video, but there's a piece of Honduran rosewood is the cap up here, which goes underneath the nut. The nut sits on it. And the idea is, again, resonance. Andy wanted this neck to almost act as a tuning fork, just super vibrant, lively neck. So again, the nut just sits on there, this Delrin nut. And something else he was talking to me about out at the factory was the fact that all the distance in this extra string up top behind the nut is maximized. So before he even designed the headstock, he figured out the exact placement of where he wanted these tuners to sit so that the tone of these strings up here, or the excess tail end of the string up top, was complementary or in harmony with the rest of the guitar. And that's one of those like little tidbits that you're just like, man, this guy, it's like that mad scientist level. That's the extra thought that goes into a guitar like this that just makes it that much more musical.
Yeah, it's innovation, but it's put into a place that makes sense. It's not like a change for change's sake. It's just like when he thinks, it's almost like he knows the result he wants, and then he figures out how to put it into place, which is totally so cool, as opposed to creating some sort of like change for, like, you know, basically, if you think about the electric guitar market today, it's basically a variation of a Fender or a Gibson at the heart. You know what I mean? It's like very rarely is something coming out that's like this, where it really, and obviously there's vintage inspirations and things here, but it's not a mimic of those guitars. And he's thinking about that, he sees it as a problem. You know what I mean? That if you were starting a guitar brand yourself today, and you were just going to mimic another brand, you would just go with the same footprint they already have. You wouldn't even, like, that wouldn't even touch your radar. And for him, it's just like the reason to build the guitar, because no one of the other guitars have this thing solved.
No, going back to the beginning of the conversation, that's really what he set out to do. It's like, and it's really hard to do that. It's tough to come up with this is a brand new silhouette that you've never seen before, completely hollow, but it's tough to come up with a new design that doesn't alienate guitar players. You know, you call this a new guitar. We've seen that countless times on the guitar market with new manufacturers that come out, but it's a lot of kind of rehashed things. This is This is brand new.
Yeah.
You know.
Or it's so different that it's not useful. Like the headstock doesn't suck. It's like that's cool. It's like it's hard. Like headstocks. If you start a guitar brand, this is where I swear it's like this is where you know if something's gonna go off the rails. Like it's hard to do something that is like familiar but not a mimic. You know, it's just like it's really to dance that line is very complicated. So the aesthetic of it is beautiful. I mean, I think they're just beautiful guitars, which is nice.
For sure.
And they weight it on your body. Like you know, it's not. The guitar isn't just like this super neck heavy. It feels, even though it's kind of like offset, the weight's in the right place.
No, that's where our conversation with Andy started at the factory. That was a big part of the silhouette design. He wanted it to look and feel balanced. So it's an offset guitar, but you know it doesn't look crazy offset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like really really natural looking guitar.
And you can play this like in any scenario. It's like if you're in a worship band, it doesn't look out of place.
Yeah.
If you're like in a rock band, it makes sense. And that's hard to do because it's either like, you know, it's like, do you want to break this out in front of the kids, or is this like, you know, it's like or not. You know, it's like this is a useful in all scenarios.
So should we get into the
Electronics.
pickups?
I do have a little soliloquy here about the electronics, which is funny because when I went out to the factory and like I was out there in like 2017 or something, and I was out there to see the new Builder's Edition Grand Symphonies Andy did, which with the sound port, and we were in his office is like the old R. Taylor factory, right? So it's a very, you know, it's probably a 1,500 square foot, you know, not big, 1,000 square foot room. And we did our bit on the Builder's Edition. He's like, I gotta show you this electric guitar I've been working on. That's kind of like where this started. It was the pickup. And he was going on and on about this pickup, and he's like, had it in this metal tube, and he was going on, and it's like, I didn't even click. I didn't get a chance to talk to you about this, about the pickup cages and like what we're gonna get into, is that he's been messing with this for like a long time. And he was going on and on about the electromagnetic field and how the magnet sits inside. And I'm like, you know, I was like totally glazed over. I'm like, guys, I'm like, I don't understand what you're talking about. But it's just like, it's something he's been really thinking through. And I kind of put it together the other day when we were on our Zoom call with the sales guys at Powers. I was like, holy cow. I was like, this is what the end result of that like thought process was. So give us the baseline of the pickups and the variations of the two.
The idea behind the pickups, as Andy tells it, was to get a pickup that was both warm and maintain clarity, which is hard to do. Those two things are often at odds with each other with the pickup. So these are single coil pickups, but they sound very big, very fat, very warm, which is tough to achieve. He did that by, it sounds like he was inspired by Paul Bigsby's original design from back in the 40s, 50s, where basically you take aluminum, you surround the magnets with aluminum, and it throws the electromagnetic field out. And that widens the range. Think of a wide range humbucker. It's kind of like a wide range single coil. So bigger, fatter, but still remarkably clear. And they sound phenomenal clean, both these guitars. There's two different pickup options, which we'll talk about here. Sound great clean, both sound great overdriven, but both have very different unique tonal character. So the guitar that you're holding, Joe, that's called the double F42, FF42. It's a 42 gauge wire, and really what Andy did, he took these, it's a neodymium magnets, are the pull pieces, put aluminum on it, and so now you get this really fat, big sound. Really warm, super juicy in the case of the FF42s. So you get a lot of lows, a lot of highs. If you look at it on an EQ curve, it's like it's a lot of everything. So those are really good for, you know, lush chord tones. It'd be great for, man. I think of this guitar more as a humbucker, but that'd be like probably overstating it.
The FF is full Faraday, and visually when you're looking on the site, this has the whole cage all the way around it, so the aluminum all the way around. If you look on the one that Justin's holding, there's the pickguard material fits inside over the pull pieces where they are. And I think you're right. I think this does sound like humbucker. It's almost like when you're in the neck position, you roll that tone knob off a little bit. It's almost like a big fat arch top.
Yeah.
But it does keep the clarity, which is like, that's the mind-bending experience. It's always like quacky Strat, slushy Les Paul. Like, those are your choices, right? And you own a bunch of both because you want different variations to keep that roundness while still being articulate is really, you know, an impressive feat.
So the PF42s, which I'm holding by comparison, again, as Joe said, he removed the aluminum. There's still an aluminum. There's still aluminum surrounding the pull pieces, but the cage is removed. So we still get the It's a quieter pickup, just like the FF42, but it moves the resonant peak of the response up. So we're getting more mid-range on this pickup than we are out of the FF42. So this pickup feels and sounds a lot punchier. More articulate is probably an overstatement, but it's a firmer, brighter sounding pickup. I think is the
A little
best way to
glassier
put it.
for sure.
This really reminds me of, it's tough to get these to fit into, anything that we're used to talking about in the historical sense. P90-ish, in the case of the PF42s, it kind of reminds me of like, especially in the middle position, like super hot telly, maybe like, I don't know, double P90s. Sometimes I'm a single coil guy, like everyone else, I have everything gravitate towards single coils. These feel, sometimes with the single coil pickup, you get in this trap of like trying to chase more warmth and looking for that single coil pickup that gives you warmer, but still sounds like a single coil pickup. The PF42s for me, like, do that. This is the pickup I've been wanting for a long time. I'm super stoked about it.
Yeah, I mean, both the guitars sound great. Really, the structure of the pickup is the same, right? It really comes down to like how the aluminum is caged.
It's the same exact pickup.
So you're not leaving the general idea. It's really just the use of how the cage throws the field and gives you kind of two flavors of sound that we can definitely help you work through. Justin did some long form videos about the guitars.
Yeah, so you can reference those. Maybe we'll splice some of that in here. But long-form videos on both the FF42 and PF42, so you can hear those by themselves. They're very different sounding, but also you can feel where they're it's the same pickup. So
it's pretty awesome. Yeah, let's hear the pickup a little bit, and then we'll come back and talk about the final parts of the guitar. So you heard the guitars. I'm happy that Justin played, so you could hear his playing as opposed to mine. Really for the, it's pretty impressive how distinct the difference is, for what you would think is just a modest change in design. But, we can definitely help you find the right sound that you're looking for. If you reach out to Justin or the guys here, we can definitely get you fixed up. So let's talk about hardware, specifically the tailpiece.
yeah, so it's a tailpiece you've never seen before. This is a brand new design, patented design by Andy. This is something that he worked on for a long time. There's a lot of math involved, a lot of engineering. So, it's a familiar looking tailpiece. You might look at this and think of a Bigsby, but it's not. It's a way more stable piece of hardware. So we have what Andy Powers is calling a camshaft tailpiece, or camtail for short. And one of the remarkable things about this tailpiece is the ramps at the bottom here, or string trees, ramps. Where the string rests at the bottom of this guitar, every groove down here is cut differently, different depth. And what he wanted to achieve there was he's compensating for the distance that the string has to travel when you depress the tremolo arm. And what he wanted to get out of that was basically the effect of a lap steel guitar, or think of it as a pitch bending wheel on a keyboard. When you depress the trem arm on this, all the strings move in relative pitch. That to me is like, you talk about a more musical playing experience. That's it. It's like he took the stability that you want out of this and put it in here as well. So one thing I'll talk about before we can kind of geek out on that is what they call it a 0-point return. when you release the trem arm, there's a stopping point. All the notes come right back to the pitch that they were at. Super stable. It stays in tune very well. You can change that. There's a little pin on here that you can take out if you want, a flutter effect where you can move the trem arm both ways, up and down. Totally doable. But that's just one of those things that only someone that has worked on guitars their whole life and like really put their mind to rebuilding this instrument as they would want it to be could do.
Yeah, I think it's so smooth. Like when you're using it, the depression is like sometimes with a Bigsby, like you see those big springs under a Bigsby, and and there's springs under this as well. But it's like it's not like you feel like that where you're leaning into a Bigsby and then you have to keep pushing, and all of a sudden now you're like bludgeoning, like you're like hanging on it kind of crazy. And the tuning stability, it actually functions. I think if anything, when I see a guitar like this, typically I'm like, run, don't walk. It's just like, that's like one of those things that only makes a guitar harder to change the strings on and you can't use it. Like who wants that? Whereas this, it's like, you hear it, I think pedal steel is a dialed sonic experience because it has that, because it's smooth in function, the sonic experience is very smooth and deliberate, but it does come back and then you strum it up in chord and it's like you don't have to run off stage and get a new guitar.
No, 100%. Like I've been playing these guitars at length in the store, and that is one thing that, again, it's remarkable. You can wail on this thing with like really minimal effect to the way your guitar is tuned.
And Andy's like an intonation tuning like savant. Like he is dedicated. Like you see that. That's a place where Taylor does time in. Like with the V class bracing, it's like he's worried about how the guitar actually, you play an open D chord and it actually you don't have to go back in and edit it in recording because it sounds in tune compared to the intonation. You see that here in the tuning machine placement, and then you see it here again. It's just musical. It's just like that's the best adjective I think of how all these features translate. They obviously have a hardtail version too,
right?
Which is made of.
So the bar is high carbon steel, and then the I don't know what you call it, like the housing itself, the bigger piece here is milled aluminum. So it's lightweight.
Super light, because it's like, that's the other thing. It's like, we get Tellys in that have Bigsby's on them. It's like, the first question we get, what's it weigh? It's like, well, it's like 11 and a half ounces. It's like the Bigsby's heavy. It's almost, it's like, whereas this, you wouldn't know it's on there. It's just like outside. Like if somebody just handed you a guitar, you would never expect there to be like hardware that looks this bulky, even though it doesn't feel bulky.
Little extra detail at the bottom that some customers may or may not know. The Powers Electric stamping at the bottom is actually stamped in there by Andy Powers. So again, these are small batch instruments, and he is actually like old school hand stamping every letter on these individually. It's like when you see it, you're just like, really?
That's why there's not a lot of them. It's take that attention to detail.
We could talk about a few more things here, like the extras. So aside from the unique look of the volume and tone knobs, let me just talk about what's going on under here real quick. So the volume knob is a 1 meg, the volume pot is a 1 meg pot. It's a Burns pot, super high quality. It's a high value, and it pairs with these pickups very well. So one of those little nuts and bolts things that that's not made in-house at Powers Electrics, obviously, but it's one of those choices that Andy made because he's like, these guys do it the best. The tone knob. This is one of those little things on a guitar that really affect the way that it performs. It acts more like a mid-range sweep. So it's not your traditional, like, turn it all the way down and it's a sound you would never, ever use in a realistic situation. All the way off, this tone knob still functions. We're dialing mids, essentially, with this. It's like a contour, mid-sweep, which is really cool. So the knobs themselves, and the selector switch and the tip on the trem arm, cool story behind here, cool tie-in to the inspiration of these guitars. It's epoxy it's layered on top of each other. Layers of different colored epoxy and resin inspired by the surfboard and car painting manufacturing process. So, when they make these items and paint these items, surfboards, cars, you get these layers of paint that over time need to be chipped away. When you chip that away, you get these really cool layers, all different kinds of colors that you can then take that, and in this case, you can mill that down, you can polish it, and you can make really cool things out of it. These take, I think they said like 10 hours. 10 hours to make these, And again, this is one of those little touches on this guitar. No two are alike, and they look incredible against the different colored body finishes.
And each one's unique, which is cool. Like you never get. It's not like they can recreate this one. It's like your set is one of one.
No, totally. And again, they complement the finishes. The finishes, by the way, are really all inspired by car finishes. I think most, if not all, of the opaque finishes are actual car finishes. So everything from classic cars to modern sports cars. You can go on our website. You'll see a bunch of different colors that we got in. The transparent finishes they only do on these select tops. These go for a little higher dollar, but they're all super top notch looking instruments, super elevated. What else can we say here?
One thing, like, you see Andy's like Southern California guy, like surfing, and like it sometimes is like I'm always interested in how something like when somebody tells you like I love cars and I love surfing and I make guitars and almost is like okay like cool like it's like sounds like a lame Facebook profile, but with Andy it's like it translates through the build so dramatically, like the visual of the surfboards and like how that resin would stack over time and he'd make something brilliant like this that you could only, that's a cultural thing for him. Like it's like in him it's like he experienced that as a kid growing up. He made guitars since he was 8 years old. He's seen all these things, and man, it translates directly through that. And then his passion for cars and the visual of the finishes, and like you see the specific, like here's a '67 Impala that came in midnight blue or whatever it would be, and it's just like this dramatic effect that
the engine turn look on the back plate or on the full Faraday pickups. It's those little tie-ins that are really bring it into the inspiration that was going through Andy's mind when he created these guitars.
And I always think like the best stuff that's built is always comes from like an honest inspiration. It's just like I think we see that with Carlos and Castadoza. Like it's like someone that just like we never tell him what to do. Like he just does it and we get it. And we're like, whoa, this is amazing because it comes from the heart. And Andy, this is like his experience into a final product, which I think is, and it's. I don't think there's anything on here that's like selfish, which I love about it. It's like something that he had to like emote, and it's his vision, but it wasn't like he wedged something in to say he did it, if that makes sense. I feel like it's like everything is so outside. It's like some of the pickups are like a little heady for me. It's like I'm just interested in like how it sounds and whatever, but it's like to me like all of his woodworking experience, his guitar experience is shown in the manufacturing of the guitar. The visual comes from an honest place. The sound comes from a very honest place. The feel of the guitar, he's like a brilliant guitar player, so that helps, you know what I mean, for sure.
Very good
I think it makes such a big impact, but it's like his experience of where he grew up and the electric guitar, like that came from Southern California. Like that's it. That's the spot where the most famous electric guitars and the beginning of that culture came from. I think that's kind of like the difference between someone mimicking something because they like it and someone living it and creating it. And it shows here.
Well put. No, they're super cool. One last thing I'll mention about the inspiration for these guitars, and maybe we can overlay it in here. Check out the cases for these guitars because it's that last little chef's kiss, if you will. The exterior of the case is a Porsche interior, Pepita interior, which is again awesome tie-in. The design of the case, the way that it opens, different, thought through. When you open your guitar from this case, you see your guitar as if it's being played. The case is it looks backwards at first, but then you get it and you're like, wow, that's a thought. That's the thought of a builder that appreciates what a guitar looks like even when it's not being played. So it's a last little, hot rod sports car tie-in that is elevated and just feels good. Very protective case too.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did a phenomenal job of giving us beautiful, functional, definitely musical. It's kind of become cheesy, but it's like every part of this guitar really resonates. It's like exciting when you hear Justin talk about it when he came back from the factory. It fit what we do. I think we want high quality, unique offerings, and I think we will definitely be able to deliver. I mean, our initial offering, here is like it's a pretty big. We went in pretty big for a small company. There's a lot of guitars in stock you can pick from, and we can definitely help you work through getting the finishes you want. They had some crazy. What was the number? We have some notes over here. How many finishes they done?
About 180.
Yeah, I mean it's like
finishes.
you're really able to get something. I think each one is its own story visually, which is really compelling. And I mean, Andy Summers from The Police, like, just walked into a shop and fell in love with them. It's like just a lot of honest, positive reviews, which to me is very. Anybody can buy reviews. I mean, you can buy an artist, you can buy somebody to tell everybody. You can get some influencers out there and get positive mentions. It's really amazing that artists of all type have really gravitated toward these.
I think that's a testament to just how different these guitars feel when you're playing them and how it makes you feel as a player. Like the sound that you get out of an amp, and you could plug these into. When I was out at the factory, we went to a studio for a studio session with top-notch musicians. We plugged these things into like every classic amp out there, and it was just, that's the moment where I knew, I'm like, these are awesome. When you hear these in a full band setting, when you're jamming on these with guitars and drums, and these things just have the bite and cut through, it's like, that's when I knew. That's when I knew.
Oh, she will be mine. Oh, yeah, she will be mine. All right, well, check out empiremusic.com. We are the newest Powers Electric dealer. Reach out to Justin, check out the shop, chat with us on the site, and we will get you a hooked up Powers electric guitar. Justin, thanks for giving us all the in-depth knowledge. Reach out. Yeah, we'll get you hooked up.
Thanks for watching.
All right, see y'all.